Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this conference on transforming possibilities into positives. As Roger Lear indicated in our last session, we think you're in for a real treat with our next session, which is going to be delivered by Matthew Gilbert, the Chief Creative Officer at Bayard. Matt, this floor is all yours.
Great, thank you. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here today. I am Matt Gilbert, and I am the Chief Creative Officer at Bayard. I've been a designer, writer for a very long time. I have worked at Bayard for about 17 years. At the beginning of COVID, I tried a beard and mustache. It didn't really work. And then I went to a goatee, and that didn't work either. But to give some context for who I am, I've been a creative professional for well over 25 years. I've worked with a number of different agencies, both on the B2C side, B2B side, an eclectic background, thought I was going to be an economist. So I have a degree in design and a degree in economics of all things. And I thought I'd just jump into it, give you a little bit of background. For the last several months, many of our clients at Bayard have been in pain, and I'm sure many of you are as well. We're seeing the kind of perfect storm of events between fiscal policy changing things to unemployment benefits to COVID openings at the same time across industries. And it's really crazy. So we have a presentation we do, which is the pain presentation. And this is just a quick example of that. Google search for jobs are down. Indeed, all of Indeed organic is down. Job seekers across the country are down. All of the different openings around the country and even internationally are seeing these upswells. And it's creating tremendous, tremendous problems for everyone, where we have some clients, especially in QSR, quick serve restaurants, that can't open their restaurants because they literally don't have people. I have one client that's trying to hire 10,000 in the next 2 months. So that's some challenge they have there. Where did all this come from? So this is a headline that probably speaks to a lot of the experience that everyone is having. But here's the thing. This is from 2013. We've been here before. This is not new if you've been in the field for a while, where we have economic booms and bubbles that creates all kinds of shortages, and economists hate the term shortage. It means imbalance to them. Something isn't right. Is it wages? Is it supply? Is it demand? And I'm going to talk a lot of it really about ways that we can help clients. We're doing this now, and we're just seeing all this pain. So what happened to the job seekers? Where did they go? What did they do? Independent of the various reasons, was it because of benefits? Was it because of openings and COVID? Let's assume for a second the internet was broken, down for repairs. And it developed 10 core strategies that you can use and start thinking about literally right now. And we're using probably variations of everything I'm about to walk you through. 10 seem like a good number. There's probably about 15, 20 in total that are part of our arsenal. When we think about messaging, we tend to think about value proposition. We tend to think about employer brand. The large version of that, the landscape version of that, is building brand. This is not a great time to be doing that when you're really experiencing tremendous pain. So what we really want to do is talk about good guerrilla marketing of your existing value proposition, your employer brand. All companies have them, whether it's a formalized program or not. You're communicating what you offer to candidates in all different ways. Sometimes it's competitive, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's not even clear what you're competing against and who you're competing against. The technology, that broken internet, if you will, is allowing people to do massive amounts of reviews and job search all before breakfast. And with certain tools like Indeed Apply and other things like that, you can apply to hundreds of jobs almost effortlessly before you finish your morning coffee. So here's the first good guerrilla. Get practical. So practical and aspirational and inspirational, all of these things have their time and place. But when we're seeing the kind of backlogs and shortages, we see it in healthcare, we see it in transportation, we see it in technology, we're seeing it across the board in QSR, retail, because they're all opening at the exact same time, all competing for the same talent, all using the same playbooks they've been using for a while, and it's not working. And it's not just their fault, it's also what's happening in the larger economy. So get practical means look at scorecards. So this is an area that I put a lot of energy into around EVP, and we developed something that we call EBX, which is a way of looking at it from the opposite direction. So if we look at employer branding and we kind of mean what it feels like to be part of an organization. And value proposition is along the lines of what you offer, what you take home at the end of the week. And we're bringing those two things together around these scorecards. And it's a social science way of thinking about things, where we look at these four core areas: financial, practical, experiential, and emotional. And these things matter to everyone across the board. We all have these scorecards on our career. We measure everything. We might not call it that. We might not use a number, but we know if we like something or don't like something. When we're asked to review things, it's the popularity and rise of review sites is because we love scoring, we love ranking. So we leverage that and look at things from that perspective of where we can align what is authentic, what is real, what is strong, and message that. So this isn't the large build a brand process. It's used for right now. So delivery drivers, and in this particular case is for a pizza establishment. I'm trying not to use client names here, was just desperate for delivery drivers. No surprise, because it's under tremendous, tremendous competition. We interviewed and spoke to over 500 different crew members, employees, delivery drivers, managers, et cetera, and we're able to develop these scorecards. And what was surprising was that our client believed that offering growth opportunities was the #1 impact point. And when we did this research, looking from that different lens, we found it was flexible schedule. So if you're a college student, if you're a spouse or a working parent, and you need to be at certain places at certain times, and that schedule doesn't fit your life, nothing else matters. No matter what they're paying, no matter what the PTO is, nothing else matters if that schedule isn't flexible enough for you. And because this is not a gig-based economy with an app that you turn on and off, it was a little bit different. And they're in direct competition with that, in direct competition with every online e-commerce engine that is driving tremendous, tremendous delivery. So by doing this, we were able to help them really understand where to message, how to message, and starting with think outside the job board, because we're in tremendous competition. Making everyone feel part of the team is essential. And there are lots of ways to look at doing this, from the kind of standard playbook stuff. We talk to employees, we get quotes, we get testimonials. Sometimes that isn't enough. And what we can do is then start to think outside that job board. And another one is looking at ways that we interact with our customers, not only our candidates. So I have several clients that are now willing and open to sharing space in ways that they weren't before, because the pain is so great. So with our Pizza Hut client, we're going to use stickers on boxes. We're going to use every square inch of real estate for window clings. And even if you're not delivering things to people's home, you're probably shipping products, you're probably sending emails, you're having ongoing communications with customers who can be candidates and alike. And word travels and word spreads. You're going to see me say this a couple of times, but the two things, like they're like the bedrock of being able to survive the next 6 months, 12 months, will be frequency and presence. So you need as much frequency as you can with the kind of presence that really, it isn't just standing out, it's standing in. So you have to stand in, you have to, where that practical comes back. So with Pizza Hut, we got over 1,000 quotes and testimonials from delivery drivers and crew members. And typically we would cherry pick 4 or 5 and have that in landing page, use that in some social media display-based things. And we threw it out the window and we said, let's show all 1,000 of them. So we're creating a page called Hut Stories, which has all 1,000 of these. So you want to talk about authenticity. To see 1,000 quotes and testimonials, and we're going back and forth whether or not we edit out any really negative ones. We would for language, of course, but we're probably pretty close to being able to show them all, even the ones that aren't positive, because they're going to see it on Glassdoor anyhow or Indeed reviews. So let's own it. Let's own our challenges. Let's own our reputation. Let's own our experience. And then when we start promoting this, we're not promoting that we're hiring, because everyone that needs a delivery driver is hiring. We're talking about something real, something meaningful, a way for people to do their own version of a review, but honest and as authentic as you can get, because it is literally coming from the mouths of those employees. So this is really outside the box. This is kind of a big thing, and it's not hard technically. Now, if you do have to think inside the job board, what we are advising and doing is asking everyone to pose this question to themselves. If the only point of contact you had with a job seeker or a candidate was a job posting, Are you ready for that? Let's not assume that they go on to landing pages, career sites, review sites. Let's assume that it's an Indeed apply or a quick apply where they are making that decision on the spot. All your metrics are then measured based off that one single touch point. And if that's the case, which it is for a lot of organizations right now, we have to make that incredibly good, really smart. Here's a quick example, and I'll show some tips for how we approach this. You have to think like a reader and also like an algorithm at the same time. So we did an improvement upon our clients' job posting. They were getting no response. They were throwing everything they could in terms of budget, in terms of programmatic, in terms of all of those things, and it just wasn't working. So they finally asked us to take a look at the posting, and we went to work. And we saw a 35% improvement with no other change whatsoever. Within 2 days, they made a hire and we were done. And then, of course, they've asked for the next one. We have a whole model for strategy around this. But you guys can take this to heart. Start with a brand position. Don't start with a history of your company. Don't start with all the things you're going to be expected to do. Tell me a story, because it's the only way. Remember, this is the only touch point I might have any other conversation, interaction, or experience with your company. And this is it. So bring that authentic value proposition, use it in the right voice and just the right information. If you're looking for people who are experienced, especially after more than 1 or 2 years experience, they have a pretty good idea of what the job might be. What they won't know is the team, the culture, how they are included, how they make a difference, how they might feel. So coming back to those 4 scorecard areas, the financial part of it, maybe a little bit. I know it's not easy in postings to get that deeply into those things. And sometimes we don't even recommend it, but we can certainly talk about what it feels like to be part of this team, their successes, the accomplishments, the vision of the company. Bring those things to your job postings in a way that typically no one loves talking about job postings. We love talking about job postings because we see it as a much bigger platform or canvas to make an impact. And it might be the only one that we have. So if we have that, we're going to make it work. Another key area is you can't change people's minds easily. So if your reputation is not perfect, your Glassdoor scores are not this, or you're not well known in your industry at all from the consumer or public facing side, we have to win the heart. And the way we win the hearts is by doing things a little different, by owning ourselves, by owning our challenges, by speaking and communicating and writing and videoing and designing in ways that reflect whatever brand standards we have to, but we're also thinking about who's on the other end of that communication. We have a model, I call it peer-to-peer, and I thread this through all of the work through all of my teams, is that try to imagine you're listening into a conversation, whether it's nurse to nurse, whether it's programmer to programmer, whether it's driver to driver, whether it's leader to leader, what that sounds like. They have their clip, they have their tone, they have their inflections, they have their pace, they have their shortcuts, they have their euphemisms. And when we can tap into that, we see tremendous difference. This one headline, which became a positioning, which became the architecture for the brand for Phoenix Children's, is probably one of the most successful we've ever done. And it actually came from a nurse that we were interviewing, how hard the job is, and then said that she loves it no matter what. And we said, it sounds like the toughest job you'll ever love. And it became this incredibly successful way of positioning. And then we build everything around that. Here's a couple other ways of doing that, is where we sometimes try to be provocative on purpose. Sometimes we own things that we all talk about, but we don't always see it come through in messaging about roadblocks, about diversity, about inclusion, about who's part of the team and what it feels like to be part of that team. In the top left corner of the screen, you can see that what I have on my website and all of our postings is everything that we are. We do not care what your hair is, your background, your anything, whether you have tattoos, whether you don't. And I can get away with that because we're a creative team, but it's the same across the company. We simply just want really good people. We want great people, and we don't want them to see any reason to think otherwise, that they wouldn't be welcome and inclusive. And of course, then we have the things on the other end of that, our councils, our groups, our meetings, our dynamics, our presentations that back that up. Now, I have another client that's a little aggressive, and they are really struggling. And they've asked us to scare the bejesus out of them in one campaign so that they could have something to look at. So we are being as consumer facing, as provocative as we possibly can within legal limits, to be able to drive traffic from window clings, from landing pages, from mail that we're going to do, from flyers that we're going to put up, even some print-based, some billboards and things like that, because we have to keep thinking outside. We have to keep thinking that the internet is broken right now. And what can we do when the internet is broken? Here's another way of prompting for the things that people are worried about. Are you a good career if I just have a GED? Are you a good career if it's my second or third career? What about for moms? What about for vets? Prove it. Show me that. Let me meet these people. Let me talk to these people. And these are easier to do. So presence and frequency, again, will come up a lot because that's what we need. And I know we don't always think in these terms on the TA side and the HR side, but Amazon is one of the largest search engines there is. So is YouTube. And these spots have tremendous following, not just for job seekers, but everyone. So we did a campaign for nurses on Amazon. We identified that people that are likely buying scrubs or specific footwear or certain types of socks, if you're standing all day long, high probability that you're probably in the healthcare profession. We messaged to that. We used a data-oriented campaign so that we were cutting through noise, and then built landing pages around that as well. It was a tremendous success by Amazon standards. They saw tremendous click-through. They saw lots of engagement. And because it was a national program, we weren't looking to drive applications, but we built a massive, almost overnight national awareness of opportunities globally for this very large healthcare employer. Another client of ours has buses, and they use these buses to shuttle back and forth between San Francisco, a mega hub for technology, to where they're located in Modesto, California, a mega hub for agriculture, and bring back. So these are done for free. They drive the bus back and forth twice a day in the morning. And we had suggested, let's turn these into moving mobile billboards for careers. And they got their approvals. Their marketing team was on board with it. So we have literally a free billboard that drives from San Francisco to Modesto and back. They've added 2 more since that it became so popular that you could live in an area that you wanted and a free commute. Now, I know that's a little bit big for some that can't do it that easy, but we can also talk about things that are kind of off the balance sheet, if you will. When you work in certain fields, the benefits that you get are this tremendously emotional, positive experience. It's not talked about as a value proposition. It should be. So we're activating that for numbers of clients. That emotional scorecard is really important to people depending on where they are in their life stages. Is it early career? Are they students, recent grads, experienced professionals? And then start to really think about outside the box. So, I mean, Amazon can afford anything they want, and they put up an inexpensive vinyl thing outside their thing. Even if they're not messaging to direct job seekers because you already work there, you're going to communicate that. I heard some of the other speakers talk about referral programs. I'm going to get to that too, in some ways to really rethink how to use a referral program for the present day problems that we're facing. I have another client that's moving to a new area. They're opening a new office. So we're doing cedar campaigns. It's not that expensive right now to take over these old billboards, depending on where your offices and facilities are, and let people know you're coming. And that's what they're doing. It's call center support. We make t-shirts for the team that promote that pride. All kinds of ways of using our spaces now, not only for internal engagement to build morale, but also to seed and plant for referral programs. This is probably one of the most important things, is be fast and be easy. And short of redoing your entire career sites and your applicant tracking, any platform systems you have, there are ways to do that, even if you don't even have those things in place to begin with. One of them is to make your forms as easy as possible. Go through it, do the due diligence, think through that. What do you absolutely minimum need to have for any compliance and so forth? Pare that down. In the same way we would do it if we were asking people to come into our store. So there's a lot of consumer thinking around this. In this case, for Hardee's, what's your zip code? That's it. That's really it. Or use your location, and it will show you jobs that are near you, instead of all of the other filters that'll go through it and process. So it's almost immediate. Here's another one that oops, I didn't want to open up the website here and show you another example here is something that we're developing internally at Baird. called CROW. It's work spelled backwards. And we've looked at the engineer from an engineering perspective, a process engineering, what it takes for someone to do a simple apply to the point of getting hired. All of these different steps. It takes almost 22 minutes, an average of 15 days. And for some industries, that literally is the success or failure based off of these things. So we reinvented it using some technology, auto refreshing every 30 days, using programmatic that auto and has rules to it. We got the apply process down with a mobile app in under 2 minutes by removing everything that we didn't need and within 6 days or less. So we also use a visual interface for this system. We ask questions in that peer-to-peer, friend-to-friend, colleague to colleague. Congratulations, schedule your interview right there before you've even left the app, ready to go. 19.6% conversion rate we're seeing, 10% on the same day. And again, in some fields, that's the difference between success and failure. That's the difference between serving customers and not, being open and not. Here's another one which is incredibly top of mind, is embrace evidence-based diversity and inclusion with the power of story. Too often we're asked to start with a story without having this evidence-based understanding of where challenges are. So I'm sharing with you a little bit from our D&I advisory practice here. And this is a lot bigger than I can get into in one talk. But if we look at the pools that we're talking to, when we say pools, we mean all of those audiences, starting with who we're reaching, who becomes an applicant, who gets interviewed, who gets hired. In between these points is where we can start to small changes help tremendously. If we look at the historical data of our applicant tracking, most people do the self versions of compliance or list certain things. So it won't be perfect, but we can identify, are we selecting good channels? Are we using strategic partnerships? What are the demographics? And then follow that through. Who becomes an applicant? We can understand that from a D&I perspective. And then who becomes or is invited for an interview or a second interview or a follow-up interview. And we can see this over time and be able to then implement smart, good strategies, not the burn the house down, blow the place up strategies, things that can be done quickly, efficiently, inexpensively, just by being smart and looking at this from these kind of engineering processes. Another way is to, again, think outside the box. So we have a client that's famous for a challenge in the 1970s where they compared their soft drink to another. And in part of our D&I efforts with them, we said, what if we did that for 2020? It was 2020 during COVID when we were looking at this. And said, let's do a comparison. This was geared towards women in technology, a tremendous challenge area for many companies. So let's do the PepsiCo Challenge 2020 and compare and contrast two employers by their CIO and see what this comes. This would be a video series done over a period of time on YouTube. Commercials are a little expensive when you get into the media part of that and the media buying part of that. Huge idea. I mean, they literally went crazy over this. And maybe we can't do the big versions, but a lot of organizations now have tools in place like Altru and other systems that allow that and create stories around these things based off of where you need that help and use that evidence-based approach, and you will see results almost instantly. So from postings and frequency and presence, think that posting from the external part to the internal part is take over some of your spaces that you can. You will see partners in marketing, partners in corporate communications, partners in executives today because of this pain that you might not have a year ago or 2 years ago. So there's an old expression, never let a good disaster go to waste. And right now, this is kind of a good disaster. Use it, leverage it, build relationships, build some bridges with parts of your organizations that might not have been so willing to give you the bottom corner of a page or the bottom corner of some of their marketing. For the longest time, we would argue, don't market jobs like products. They're not the same. It gives us bad conversion numbers. Getting likes is great. Getting apps is better. But for this period, we actually have to reverse that. For now, think about marketing like a job. So we have a client that was looking to hire over 100 data scientists, one of the toughest jobs to find and fill. And we said, can we be provocative? And they said, we will do anything it takes to get applications. So there's a lot of talk and controversy around data science and how it was used during elections and misinformation. And we said, we're going to tap into that, because what you would do as a data science for this organization is help people figure out what's for dinner. So you can see over there, explore data science jobs that are not killing democracy. It is meant to be tongue in cheek. It is meant to drive a reaction, and it did. And that's exactly what we were looking to do. Another one is, instead of just recruiting for a job, tap into your internal expertise. We've all seen TED Talks. Every organization has their experts, their subject people that can do a webinar, do a talk, promote that talk, introduce, build relationships, make connection, and you'll start to see something. Is it a little bit more time? Yes, it is. But the impact of that in terms of career reputation, jobs reputation as employer is tremendous. And they're almost they cost very little to do in terms of time. They're easy to set up, easy to stand up. If you look through your organization's recruiting channels from across the board, from D&I all the way through to hire, engagement, and all the things you do internally, I guarantee you, you will find things that are really interesting to people that they'd probably have no other way of tapping into unless they became employees. Take those things, put them on the front. Social media makes it easy to do this and inexpensive to do this through your own individual accounts on places like LinkedIn and Instagram and Pinterest. Another thing, and I heard this topic come up in previous talks, is how do you make video? So making video, original footage, going out and shooting is a little more involved, but it's very doable. We've done several shoots during COVID, following all guidelines. And we've also what we call flip the script, because YouTube viewership is up tremendously, over 300%. And we're seeing that predominantly with a lot of Gen Z and millennial, certainly on the earlier end of millennial, which kind of starts around 28, 29 years old. And we flip the script. Here's a couple of examples. Our client, CarMax, had trouble with show rate, people not showing up for interviews. They weren't sure why. We weren't even going to worry about why. We wanted to show them that everything was safe. And hopefully you'll be able to hear this audio, but if not, you can see it. So a flip book is just like it was when you were a kid. We take static images, a little motion graphics, put some music behind it, and we have a video. Video does far better when posted through social media. So it is a video. And in this case, we actually did some training with our client. We showed them, we gave them documents, we did a session, how to use your iPhone to walk around and shoot video. We weren't concerned with what we call the production value, because authenticity mattered more. The subjects mattered more, showing them this environment and how clean and how safe it is, as well as the people there. Here's another one where we weren't able to shoot that we did for our client that had tremendous recruiting challenges. We wanted video on their website. We wanted video on their landing page. We wanted video in all of their social media. So we linked this back to the traditions of this 200-year-old plus healthcare organization, real simple, 10 seconds, and it's done. Here's another one for our client that did a large pay race for truck drivers. There was no video in this, still images, a little bit of motion graphics. It's relatively easy to do. We do these all in-house, takes just a couple of days and it doesn't break the bank to do it. And we have something dynamic. We have something that we continue to post and share across the board. The last one, it's actually not the last one, I have a bonus one, number 11, is referral, 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 and more importantly, gamify your referral program. We've done quite a few surveys with employees about referral programs, why they do it, why don't they do it, what are the roadblocks, what are the barriers, what are the issues. And there are a couple of issues with this. One, most organizations don't communicate this particularly well. It'll show up here and there at an onboarding, and maybe there's a reminder now and then. It's certainly not fanfared and celebrated when referrals are made. There's also some challenges with linking people to the referees if they didn't get an employee number or a name correctly. There's also a lot of discussion, what is a referral in a digital age? So if you post a job through my personal LinkedIn, if I post a job through my personal LinkedIn account and someone sees that and then goes on, is that a referral? Do I still qualify for any of the rewards from that? Another part of this, people don't like to do these things based off of money. You know, it's really kind of a touchy thing. So we've developed techniques to gamify referral program. And I'll show you a couple of quick examples. We had a hairstyle salon client, they were a chain, they had about 800 different salons, and we gave away prizes for referrals. And anyone, anywhere that made a referral, even if we couldn't perfectly link them up to who was done because of how referrals are done in the stylist industry, they got a coupon for a cup of coffee. They got a digital e-coupon for a cup of coffee. And if you did reach the numbers that were rewarded, you'd get the new Dyson dryer, it's several $100s. We have another client, a large retailer. We are talking with them now of doing a gamified referral program where we're tapping into a TV show from, I think it was the 70s, where if you win, you get a shopping spree for X minutes based off the number. And then for a grand prize, we'll put a Tesla inside the retail environment. Of course, we'll be live streaming this. Of course, we'll be promoting this. So again, we're promoting like products, even though they're not products. And the very last one is probably the most important takeaway, is to stop recruiting and think wooing. We have to do a little bit more, a little bit extra today as this crazy is happening across the country. And what that means is to think about messaging, to think about who we're saying, to really be in the shoes of the person on the other side. It's the ultimate candidate centricity. You know, when we're buying homes, there's a buyer's market and a seller's market. Right now, it's so confusing. It is definitely a candidate's market, and we have to woo them. We have to show them where we care. We have to speak from the heart. We have to look at those 4 scorecards. We have to, even if we do these beautiful career sites and landing pages, we still have to think about that job posting and also be able to provoke when we can. Provoke doesn't mean negative. Sometimes it's just changing people, how they think as much as possible. And that's it. Hopefully there's time for any questions. I wanted to be quick and mindful of time. I know when I get a little bit time back after meetings. So I will turn it to any questions or comments for me.
Thank you, Matt. That was great. We have had one question come in. What does EVX stand for? You used that acronym earlier.
Yeah, I just saw that in the chat because when I'm presenting, it's hard to see the chat. So EVX is our new model, and it's a combination of practices that build strategy stack. The X represents experience. So I come from a data background as almost an economist and was for a little while. And when I started, I mean, we're talking 2004, I kept seeing these same challenges, that the messaging of value was so closely aligned to an organization's corporate values that they weren't meaningful to people. It wasn't that they weren't real, it's just they couldn't connect it to a typical job seeker who's thinking in terms of PTO, benefits, culture. Will I make friends here? Will I fit in? Will I have opportunities to grow? What does learning look like? So when we started thinking about, well, is that shift over to employer brand? So we have employee value proposition that wasn't connecting. You can't promise inspiring purpose to someone. You can't offer someone diversity. But what we can do is show the experience of those things. So what we did with EVX is we took the 2 practices of looking at value proposition from the lens of the experience that people have of that value and connect that with the creative and messaging elements of employer branding into one program. And the scorecards are a really important part of that, where we create a role profile and not a persona. Personas lead to bias. We're creating fictional narratives of things that don't really exist. And really there's, candidates are so diverse. They're coming from all different backgrounds. Do they want work-life balance? How much? How so? So by taking that kind of perspective of what is the experience of values, bringing that forward into our messaging, our strategy stack, it is authentic by design. Our targeting is on point, like we were able to share with our delivery driver client that for years messaging that it was a growth opportunity was undermining performance. They're already seeing an impact from that within the first day of launching postings around that, where we flipped that around and started talking about the experience of that value. We still build the brand houses and things like that. If you're familiar with Gartner's model, they had their approach, which was a great approach, but today it's so different. The technology has made it so hard to find that experience of value. It's more than just a video on your website. It's really being able to connect with people in that peer-to-peer way. So EVX is a process that has a couple of marquee social science beginnings, so that we're trying to understand the influences as much as we are the employer's perspective. I liken it when people ask me about this. It's like a tennis match. I've got candidates on the left, I've got employers on the right, and I'm in the middle. And I'm watching one say, I want this, and the other one saying, I have that. And I'm watching them misalign and misalign and misalign. And I'm like, but you align on so many other places, but you're not talking in a language that you guys can understand, because EVP is not a language that job seekers think of. They don't even know what it is. And in terms of things like employer of choice, when I test these things, they're coming back, I don't know what that means, but they look like a great employer. I'm like, that's exactly what it means. So we're bringing these two groups together, candidates and employees, into the same mix so that we're finding value as people experience it and building our brand houses, building our strategy stacks from that. And it is entirely authentic, because it's the only way to be it, because we're not building it from an aspirational view of messaging or fictional characters through personas, and we're not recycling our internal messaging that we would like to feel with it not being real for people who are experiencing it. And then we do it as an architecture, because it'll be very different for someone that's right out of school, early career, than it will be for someone who's a seasoned professional. It will be different for exempt versus non-exempt. It will be different for people that require advanced years of experience or education to succeed. It's also about removing biases at the same time. So it's a big strategy stack is what EVX produces. I hope I explained that well, but you can certainly go to LinkedIn. I have a lengthy article on that, and I'm giving a talk on that in a couple of weeks, specifically on that topic. It is I felt for a long time it was time to innovate around value proposition. They all come from the consumer marketing world. So does employer branding. And it's like, we need something born from TA to be able to communicate.
Okay. So of all the 11 things that you covered today, and wow, it was a great journey through employment or recruitment marketing, employment branding. If you're a small to mid-sized business and you're not part of a larger chain, you're not part of a franchise, you're a doctor's office, or you're a legal firm,
Sure.
of all those 11 things, what in your view would be the place, where would be the place to start? What one thing would you encourage the small to mid-size local or regional employer to begin with?
That's a great question. It's one I'm asked often. And I know this is not going to sound sexy or exciting, but the number one easiest to win, quickest to win is job posting, because it's where most job search starts. Almost everything today is online. If it starts with Google, it winds up on Indeed. If it's on Indeed, it's a different other job board or aggregator. It's your first point of contact. It is definitely the last point of contact. And like I was trying to share earlier, these days it's becoming the only point of contact. If you have no budget to do anything other than that, that is the one thing that you can do that equalizes the playing field. It makes the individual doctor's practice as competitive as a hospital system that has 178 facilities. Because writing a good posting, writing a smart posting is fair game for everyone. It takes a little bit of practice. It takes a little bit of the social science to try to understand not only audience, but where you align on those types of things. But it's one of those democratized areas that you don't have to be a professional. You don't have to know the Adobe Creative Suite. You didn't have to go to a design program. You don't even have to be a copywriter to do it. You just have to be really thorough in how you're organizing your thoughts and thinking about who's on the other side of that. Now, of course, if you can do a little bit more, we would add a landing page or career site to those things, and then it starts to expand into various types of marketing using social media, but then you need a lot more resources than a small individual practice. But we also make the same recommendation to organizations that are international, multi-billion, Fortune top 100 is let's start with postings.
Okay. Since I and Lindsay did a whole session on reimagining job postings earlier today, couldn't agree more. I think that's great advice, and important for folks to consider. Particularly if budgets are limited, time is limited. You're an HR department of one. It's a great place to really have an impact in a hurry. Any other questions for Matt? We've got a real expert here. Here's your chance to pick his brain a little bit. Any questions? All right, Matt, we're going to let you go. Thank you very much for taking some time out to spend it with us today. We really appreciate it. And we will make sure that folks get to tap into your expertise with the recorded session that, as I mentioned earlier, we will be posting in about a week.
My pleasure. Thanks, everyone, for your time.